Welcome to Building 72, the podcast brought to you by the Entertainment Arts and Engineering program at the University of Utah. Thank you for joining your hosts, Adam Hunter and Corinne Lewis, to talk about the video game industry and, probably other stuff.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Building 72. I'm so excited about today's conversation. I am Corinne Lewis, and I am here with my good friend, Adam Hunter.
Yes, and today I'm glad to be here because today we have an awesome guest. His name is Kaltin, but I'm going to toss the mic to him because he'll be able to do a great job of introducing himself.
Sure. Thanks, Adam and Corinne. I'm excited to talk with you all today, mainly because I haven't really got the chance to talk with you since I graduated. Adam, I think we've had a couple conversations, but nothing like on a personal level, which is great. So I'm excited to do this. My name's Kaltin Kirby, and I'm an associate producer at Filament Games, located in chilly Madison, Wisconsin. And I graduated from cohort 9 in the EAE graduate program, and was fortunate enough to get my this position like right out of the gate. I graduated on Friday the 3rd, or Friday.
It was the 3rd.
I think it's 2nd or 3rd, and I started work on May 4th. So I was like right out the gate. So very, very fortunate, but I'm really excited to kind of talk about some of my experiences through the program and now up at Filament Games.
Well, it's so funny to see you because like we spent so much time together recently, except now none of us are recently talking in person to each other.
So I think, Corinne, you were the first faculty member from EAE that I met, because I actually got involved with EAE back in 2015, 2016 with cohort 6,
right?
Because I was the dungeon master for a group of C6 students, and we were playing Dungeons and Dragons in the basement of Building 72. And you walked in, and I think you were the first like faculty member I had met at that time.
I was there.
That was actually where I was going to go with my first question, because I want to talk to you about where you're at now and things like that. But you have kind of a different background than a lot of our alumni end up having. You have a theater background, correct?
Yeah. So
how did you end up? I mean, you said D&D, but like how did all that end up where it was?
Yeah. So like you said, Adam, my background is in theater. I actually graduated from the University of Utah with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting back in 2014. And because pretty much growing up, I wanted to be an actor. That was what I wanted to do. I saw, movies, and I'm like, I want to do that because that seems like fun. Like, who wouldn't want to live in 1,000 different worlds and tell 1,000 different stories for a living? Like, that just sounds incredible. So I grew up wanting to do acting. I did acting on the side. I really didn't do it a lot in my elementary, junior high, and high school. In the school setting, it was a lot of like community theater and stuff like that. I would call it like semi professional theater. And then I auditioned and got into the actor training program at the University of Utah, and went through that for 4 years. And then when I graduated from that, I pretty much worked very consistently as an actor from 2014 up until 2018. So I had, I think the longest break between working on projects was like 6 months. So I was often doing, I was always doing a show of some sort. I oftentimes was running 2 shows at once. So I'd be like performing for one show on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and rehearsing for another show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so just keeping really, really busy that way. During that time, I actually wrote my own theater piece, and I performed a few times. But what eventually led me to games was, at least in Utah, there isn't a ton of paying theater. And so it was almost impossible to have the theater be my full-time job while living in Utah. And so I had to support myself with a regular day job, like a lot of other actors have to do. And so I worked for a company working at doing all sorts of things, from client service work to project management. Was actually like my first introduction into production style work. And I also was doing testings. We were a quality assurance testing laboratory. But what I came to realize was I was not very happy at that job. That job had very little creative freedom, very little creative energy at all. And I would end the day either frustrated or exhausted, not in a good way. And while I was at this job is when I met a group of kids from C6, and how I met them. So I'm kind of like going back and forth because I'm trying to remember the order and all this, how this happened. So I guess the first thing that happened is there's a C6 student by the name of Cody Lee.
I was going to say, I thought you and Cody were friends for a long time.
Yeah. So he's an amazingly talented 3D artist.
Yeah.
And Cody and I have known each other since we were 13. We went to the same junior high school and high school together and became best friends rapidly once we met each other. And so Cody was in C6 at the time, and he, we all played League of Legends together. Like me and him played League of Legends, and he had a group of friends in C6 who had played League of Legends.
Yes.
So I played with them.
They were very loud.
Yes. But I would play with them, and we just played online, and I kind of like put faces, or I didn't know I had any faces to put with the names, but like, oh, there's these people. And then one day Cody messaged me and said, hey, we're going to do a dinner at my house with my current rapid prototyping team when they were in their first semester. And he invited my brother and I to come and meet these people who would be playing computer games with. So we said, sure. And we came up and had dinner. And funnily enough, the team that he had dinner with was the rapid prototyping where they fired somebody.
Oh, uh-huh.
The day that dinner was the day that Kenny, who I'll talk about in a second, had to fire Cody from his team.
Oh, they don't do that every time now, by the way.
At least that wasn't awkward.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but so I met all them, and that was kind of like the first seed of like EAE getting into my brain of like, hey, this is something maybe I can do. Because I started talking with Kenny and Cody and Vega and oh my gosh, what's his name? I'll think about it in a minute. He's an engineer who I thought was a tech artist, but he's an engineer.
That's happened twice.
Utsov, there we go.
Oh, Utsov, yeah.
That's his name. So I got to meet all of them,
and got a job at Unity.
Yeah, I saw that. And Michael as well, Michael Brown.
Yeah.
So I met all of them, and we started talking about game development stuff, and I got really excited about it because it sounded like, hey, like my current thing I don't like about my job doesn't exist in the gaming industry. It can't exist. If it exists somewhere and people are making games, I feel like they're doing it wrong.
Right.
But so I got really, really excited about it. And this was back in like 2016. And so I went, and this is like, you should apply. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm doing this acting thing. Maybe it's not the right time. And essentially the next 2 years was Kenny consistently bothering me about applying for it. He's like, you should do it. And I had one day, and then, fast forward to 2018, I had one day where I had a very particularly bad day at work, where I went to work. I left work at 5. I had a rehearsal at 6. And the theater was like a 5-minute walk from my workplace. And I literally walked to the theater and just sat in the audience just to try to decompress because I was in such not a great headspace. And I sat, I had to decompress, went through rehearsals, and then went home, and Kenny came over for dinner that night because he had recently moved up to by where I lived. And he could tell something was a little bit off. And he asked, what's going on? And so I started talking to him about it. He's like, dude, I've told you about this so many times, but you should apply to EAE. Like, he's like, if what's going on is causing this much of frustration, and if the reasons are what you're saying they are, like, this would be perfect. And so I kind of like sat and thought about it. And I was like, wow, Kenny is 100% right. Like, why am I not doing this? And so I think part of it was reserves of like, man, like, am I giving up acting by doing this? Am I giving up like my first thing that I loved? And by the way, spoiler alert, the answer is no.
No.
I haven't had to give up acting at all.
No.
But the thing that made me excited about acting and still makes me excited about acting is, like I said earlier, to go into all those different worlds and to go into all those different stories and being able to tell and show things that don't exist, to be able to make something that doesn't exist, and that excitement that comes with that. And video games does the exact same thing. It's just a different way from of telling it. And so I thought about it. It's like, this makes so much sense. Like, why have I been fighting this for 3 years?
Because grad school is a choice,
Yeah,
and it's expensive, and
that's
it
true.
takes a lot of like putting the rest of your life on hold.
Oh yeah.
Feels like that. And so it's a big decision. And I've been working with grad students for a really long time, and I've seen people come at the wrong time.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly, I think what it is whether it's the universe or whatever it is. I think I joined EAE at the exact time I was meant to join it. Because Kenny talked to me about it. I think we even had a conversation where he's like, dude, if it's the application fee that's bothering you, I'll pay for your stupid application.
Man, he was like determined. No wonder you're working with him now.
Right. And so
had you ever, before that, I mean, obviously you had acting as like your thing, and not to derail the conversation, had you ever considered like video games as a viable career? Because you played them plenty. Was that ever even a passing thought in your head?
It was always the childhood dream of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to make games?
Yeah.
I didn't know the University of Utah had a program for that. I didn't know programs for that existed until like 2015 when I graduated, and I was like, Cody, I actually don't know what your major is. And he's like, oh, I'm studying video game development. I was like, that's a thing? Like you that's a thing you can get a degree in?
Yeah,
so
Cody was one of the first. So
yeah, so I think because he started in 2010, which would have been C1, right?
No, so he came through our undergrad program too.
yeah. So that's when he started undergrad was
yes,
2010.
Yeah. So the undergrad stuff started in 2008. So
got it.
Yeah, but he was like, I've known Cody forever. So
me too.
Right.
But sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
No, you're good. But like I said, it was always that childhood dream of like, man, it would be cool. And it always I never knew how to start or where to start. And I didn't know there was programs for it, right?
Well, there really wasn't. I mean, I think Adam and I probably would have done that too, except they're just like, people didn't think games were a real thing.
Yeah. Well, they are. And I guess I'm really happy that EA existed because so I'll continue the story, but there's a little bit here that like links into it so well. I applied, wrote like that night, I think I wrote my cover letter, emailed the people who to do letters of rec for me. I think I had Kenny do one. I had Michael Brown, who at that time was working at, or I think he still works for High Res Studios.
Oh, High Res, right. That's where we went. Yep.
And then my professor from my undergrad wrote letters of rec. And I think I sat down, wrote my cover letter, and then like an hour later at like midnight, I reread my cover letter and made edits and then submitted the application. Just that night, because I know myself well enough that I thought, if I don't do this now, where I'm like my head's in the right place to do this, I wouldn't do it.
Sure.
Or I'd have to wait till something like I have to wait until another really bad day, which I didn't want to happen because that's not a fun thing.
No.
And then fast forward, less than a month later, and I gotta tell the story because I always give him crap for this. So during this time, I had an interview with Hallie, which was great, and got to talk to her a little bit. And then like the next week, I'm in a meeting at work. And Kenny texts me and goes, "Hey man, do you have a second to talk? I need to talk to you." And like we just were sitting down to this meeting, right? And I go, I'm about to go in a meeting. I can step out if I really need to. He's like, no, it's fine. Just I need to catch you up on some stuff, and just call me when you can. And so I'm in this like 2-hour work meeting. Just my brain's going, oh no,
with
I didn't
this
get
ominous feeling, just
right. So meeting gets over. I go to the break room. I text Kenny. I say, "Hey, are you available?" He's like, "Yeah." So I give him a call. And he goes, "Hey man, so I just got done talking with Hallie before I text you, and or Hallie and Corinne and everybody, and they they wanted me to, they thought since I was the one who encouraged you to apply that I should have to break the news to you, and you got in. And I was like, oh, you're such a jerk. Because he set it up, like it just kept dragging out. I was like, no, just tell me I didn't get it.
Oh, that's so awful. You know, Colton, that is the best thing about that job, is getting to tell people they got into grad school. It's
so
really
good.
hard to tell people that they didn't get in, but it is so fun to tell people they did.
Yeah. But I mean, I was ecstatic. Like I was on cloud nine that day. Like we, called everybody, told them, say, hey, I got into the program, going to grad school. And I was so excited. And I honestly, I haven't looked back since. So when I started grad school, I was, like I said earlier, I was in rehearsals for a show. It was the same show that I had that like vent moment at. And one of the girls in the cast, after I'd started school, because I left my job 2 weeks or 3 weeks before school started. And so I had those 3 weeks to like turn my brain off of work stuff and transition to going back to being a student. And there was a girl at rehearsals who, after about a week into the EAA program, came up to me and went, hey, can I talk with you for a minute? And I said, sure. And she's like, has anything changed with you recently? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, there's something so different about you these last few weeks. She's like, you're glowing. Like on stage, it just feels like you're glowing. Like I've known this person for 3 or 4 years at this point. So she's seen me at my highs and seen me at my lows. She's like, it just feels like you're glowing on stage, like you're so happy. I'm like, it's because I am. And like honestly, since that day one of rapid prototyping, I haven't looked back. Like it's been such an amazing journey going through rapid and learning all those skills and meeting all those people, and then into our 1 semester projects where we got to build an alt control game, and then into thesis. Like it's been such an amazing journey, and I haven't looked back. Like I have never once regretted applying and finally listening to I'm getting started to get teary. I have never once regretted finally caving into Kenny pushing me.
Well, sometimes I think that's what we need, is for people who really, really genuinely care about us to tell us, look, I can see that you're going down the wrong path, but look, there's something else over here that I know you'll be really good at. And
Absolutely.
sometimes if you can just kind of be open for opportunity. I think that that's a life skill that I wish more of us had, was be open for opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's also like my dad always tells me, his favorite thing to tell me is luck doesn't exist. That luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
I like that.
And so, with going into EAE, there was an opportunity, right? They're accepting applications. And also I would say the opportunity was, I got to a really low point that like I realized something needed to change.
Yeah.
And then luckily I was prepared financially and hopefully at that point mentally ready to start a new phase of my life. And I did. I took that opportunity. And so the same thing happened now with my job here at Filament. Is when I was starting to look for jobs, I messaged Kenny, because we're still really, really great friends. I said, hey, if a producer job opens up at Filament, please let me know, because I would really like to apply and work there. If anything, to have a chance to work with you, because I haven't got that chance. And he said, yeah, sure, man, I'll let you know. And then a few weeks later, he texted me and said, hey, check our website, we just posted a job. And just because I was ready for it, and I had cover letters, at least like templates of cover letters of like for different types of jobs, whether that was serious games or AAA games or indie studios. I had kind of my thoughts collected in template form. That job posted. That day I wrote my cover letter first thing in the morning. I went to school remotely at that point, sat at my desk, worked through class. At lunch, I reread my cover letter, made some edits. End of the day, reread my cover letter, made a final pass of edits, and submitted the application because I was just ready for it.
Yeah.
And then, a week later, I had an interview. Next week, I had an interview, and then I got the job offer. And it was just, making sure I was ready for that opportunity right when it presented itself.
I think that's such good advice to give to people. I mean, regardless of where you are in your, your working life, is that you do kind of have to always be prepared. Not that
Mhm.
we're always looking for new jobs. I mean, that's not what I mean, but I think I think your dad's right.
Mhm.
I want Kaltin to now have a show called like Being Ready with Kaltin Kirby.
Actually, you know what? I think the be prepared thing, it's about being like we're really good gamers. So like you have to you have to have your inventory ready. You have to know where your spells are. Like I'm thinking about WoW,
Yep.
and
See, but
like
then you can't spend your mega elixirs on the final boss, because what if there's a final boss after that?
Oh man. I'm playing through Final Fantasy X right now, and that feeling is so real.
Right? Where it's like I have all this stuff, but I can't spend it because what if there's an even bigger thing right around the corner?
Yeah.
Adam ruined my life. He made me play Chrono Trigger, and I can't
I'm
kill the final
so
boss.
sorry that I made you play Chrono Trigger. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. So
So Kaltin, you told us the story of where you came from, and you got through school and now you're at Filament. Especially with someone who, as far as like professional video games, has been a recent development in your life,
Mhm.
relatively recent, right? Within the past number of years. Do you find that there is either a misconception that you had about the game industry, or is there something that a light has been shown since you've entered the industry, or did you come out of school and you're like, yep, this is exactly what I was prepared for, and let's do this?
Sure. Well, I think it's both, right? So I'm gonna kind of like flash back and like promote a previous episode of the podcast because I got to listen to it today. But upon listening to and watching interviews with different producers in different companies, I've come to realize that production is so different everywhere you go.
it really is.
There's no standard of this is what a producer does.
No.
I think there are flavors of it. Like everyone has their own kind of like mix of things.
Yeah, you probably know how a calendar works. That's probably
Yeah,
like a fun
exactly.
thing.
Spreadsheets.
Yep. But so I would say is like I was pretty prepared coming into this job, knowing how like velocity works, and knowing how to plan a sprint, and knowing how to plan a project, and checking scope. And I think EAE prepared me exceedingly well for that. And one thing that like is the most valuable thing I think I ever was taught about it, and that I still do, is the idea of a game journal. And so like I just got this one because I filled up my other one, but I have a game journal now for the projects I'm working on at Filament, where this is where I keep track of like all of my daily tasks. Every morning I flip the page and write the date, go back to the last page and see, what are tasks that I assigned myself that I didn't get done, bring those over. Those are first priority because they were supposed to be done the previous day and they didn't. I check Slack and make sure there's no to-do lists, and add those to the list. Check calendars, looking for upcoming dates, and I pretty much make this list of what I need to get done. And then for the rest of the day, that notebook is where I take notes. So anytime I talk to somebody, especially because we're now all this work from home, I feel that note taking is so invaluable, because it's so easy to forget something if we're not all in a room talking, I think. And so I write down any like minor thing, even if it's something like, oh, X person felt a little off to me today. Like even if I know something personality wise, I just take a note because I don't know what's going on in that person's life, right? And if it's like something I see maybe for a week, maybe I'll reach out and go like, hey, is everything okay? And making sure it's not just in my brain, right, or in my head.
Yeah.
And then what I like to do is open the door. So if there's something I can help with that they just need someone to vent to, I'm there to be that person. If they're like, hey, it's really not a you thing, I'm like, okay, and I respect that, and case closed, but like it gives me just a way to like keep a temperature check on how people are doing. And that was actually one of our professors, Chris Shen, that was the thing he assigned us to do, that like most, if not all of my class grumbled about when we're like, oh, we have to keep a journal. And like for me, I was like, cool, I got to keep a journal because I do that in my daily life anyway. I just had to like separate out my game stuff from personal stuff. I was like, cool, I got to keep a journal. But like I know when I'm getting behind. I know like when I don't do everything I was supposed to, or somebody's like, hey, you said you get this and you didn't. Odds are it's because I didn't write it down. I didn't put it in my little personal game journal. So like that I think is so important, and being able to talk to people, with EAE, you're with those same people for 2 years. And you learn, you get to know those people inside out. You get to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. You see people at their best, you see people at their worst. And for better or worse, you end up having crucial conversations with people. You end up talking to them on a personal and professional level. And that's something that's been super valuable up in my experience here at Filament, is being able to talk to people, and knowing when I have to put the professional hat on, where I'm like, hey, I'm your producer. And then when I put on the hat, like, hey, hey, it's Kaltin, let's virtually get a cup of coffee and chat, and I think EAE trained me to do that quite well. Just because of the nature of I know that we've known those people for so long, and the structure now. I think I talked to Adam about this a few months ago. That I think the structure of how projects go, from rapid prototyping to the semester project to the year-long thesis, I think is so good now. Would I have liked a year and a half or a year and 3/4 of a year to do a thesis project to make maybe a bigger, better game? Sure, but I can say at least for my team, and I don't like talking for other people, but I think I can say this pretty accurately. For every thesis team on C6, none of the games that we did would have been as successful or as good as they were without that one semester project.
I 100% agree with that, especially because I teach that class.
Yeah. Well, it was so useful because hardly any of us had scoped a bigger project than Rapid, before. And even people who came out of the undergrad, I think didn't quite know how that scope process worked and how to conceptualize, take that game from the conceptual stage and say, hey, we've got 3 months,
Yeah.
And I mean, God, I couldn't even think about if I was trying to scope a game for a year and a half in my second semester, that would have broken my brain.
Well, we try to iterate and play test and do the same things that we teach you guys all the time. When we're done, I should tell you what we're going to do this semester, since we can't all be together doing alternative controllers. See what you think.
Okay.
So spoilers for that's no spoilers. Check back at the end of the semester, podcast listeners. We'll tell you what happened.
And another thing that I think that EAE prepared me super well for was the rapid prototyping class. Being able to deal with curveballs.
Yeah.
Wow. So one thing I think that's unique to Filament is I'm currently deving 4 different games.
Oh, wow.
So I'm the producer on 4 different projects. At one point I was on 5. I was co-developing, or was co-producing with Kenny. And the one thing that EAE I think taught me through Rapid was learning how to roll with the punches and learning how to this project's taking more of my time this day. How do I even think about prioritizing my time when I know this needs this much time? And so being able to think on my feet, not panic, that's the biggest thing ever, not panic when given a curveball. When something doesn't go right, not panicking, I think, is just the number one most important thing.
I don't know what you guys are doing wrong at Filament. I never had a game not go exactly according to plan. I don't know what's going on there, but you might want to reassess that.
No, that's not sarcasm at all.
Yeah, but being able to think about that kind of stuff and have that kind of a mentality has been super important, because at the end of the day, no one's gonna die. If something goes wrong, no one's gonna die. And that's exactly. Well, that's also something about games that also is why I enjoy working in games so much. Is the gaming industry is so new. It is so new compared to and it's also way different compared to any other art or technical form. There's nothing like games out there, and it's all off in its own solar system. And I don't think really anybody. And so you can have a plan. Producers, I like to have plans right from the get-go. I make a plan for the project, knowing full well that plan is just gonna veer off the road. But
follow another road.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not panicking and rolling with that and going, I had my plan broke. Instead of trying to fight tooth and nail and get it back onto my original plan, let's adapt. Right. I think it was so important. And that's something I think that the Rapid class does so well. is it beats the fear out of you.
Mm.
That like if something doesn't go well or if something's just way out of left field, that's fine. Like that's a-okay. We will figure it out.
There's a lot of smart people, and we're gonna work through it. Especially when you are on a team with people with a lot of varied background, lots of skills. You'll figure it out. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but you figure it out. It's honestly, games remind me so much of how we grew EAE, because every day there would be a different thing that we'd have to try to figure out how to deal with, and
for sure.
It's kind of like, I guess that's part of the reason why game development makes so much sense to me, because it's just like, it's how we did it. Like, it's very startup mentality. It's like you use what you've got in front of you. You use constraints. I'm reading this really good book called Stretch, if you might want to check it out. It's all about how you are either stretching or you're chasing, and chasing doesn't really give you, you always think you need more resources. And instead, stretching means we're going to be creative and use the things that we already have. And it's a fascinating book, all based in, all lots of science, not just, self-help. So
yeah, well, that's also, I guess, the other thing I love about games is just the creative solutions that you can do, right? And I guess, like, going back, that the reason I love games is because I get to be creative every day. Like, at Filament, we're not what I would call in-engine producers. So we rarely actually physically work on like the code or help with art or stuff like that, or design.
Right.
We're kind of like strictly production, like schedule management, task management, which is why we can work on so many projects at once. But even in something that sounds really non-creative and static, every day I can just like, it's, hey, how do I get this schedule to work? Even if I'm there as a sounding board for engineers or artists, if something's not working, just being I think another C9 student calls it rubber ducky programming, which is just, you need a rubber ducky to talk to, even if it doesn't understand a word you're saying, sometimes talking to somebody.
I love that. I love that.
That's a light bait special.
Oh, I can hear that light say that.
But so that's what I've been really enjoying about this, and like where my creative need has been filled, is being able just to, even though I'm not physically solving the problem myself, like I might have been in EAE, because usually with my thesis project at EAE, when something went wrong, often it would be myself and the engineers sitting talking, and all of us would be working on it actively to find a solution. And I'd be in the engine playing with blueprints. I'd be over their shoulder looking at their code and just seeing if there's anything that pops out to me. Where I don't do that too much at Filament, but I've taken a more just support role. And it's different, but it works just the same. And I really, really enjoyed like learning that balance.
Well, creativity comes in all disciplines. I love there's a quote that I remember from a researcher that does research on creativity. Her name's Teresa Amabile, and she says that it's innovation that works is really what creativity with a little c. Or my other favorite one that I always talk about is most advanced yet acceptable. I love those.
I like that.
as creativity goes, it's like, if we're talking about big C, Mona Lisa, little c, creativity, that still means, in any discipline, and I think producers actually have to be very creative, not just, scheduling creative, but you have to really understand people, and producers are so critical.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of leads me, Karina, give me all the segues. I love it. That leads me to something that I felt like I was prepared for because of my previous job, that maybe EAE didn't prepare me as much for it. But I don't know how you would for this. So this is not a critique like, EAE bad. By no stretch is this that, just because I don't know how you would do it.
Well, it's been all EAE good here like up until now. So bring it on by all means.
So
no word from our sponsor.
So one thing about Filament that's not unique to Filament, but is unique to some companies, is we're a work for hire studio. We go out and we bid on projects that people are like, hey, I want to make a project about X. And we go and we create a pitch, and we make a budget and a quote and a timeline, and we go, this is what we can do that for. Like, here's how much money and time it would take us to do that. And then they're like, yes. And then they give us the money and we make it, or they go, no, but, and then we negotiate. Right. And because we're work for hire studio, we have, every project has a client. We have one project in development as a studio that is for Filament Games. But every other project we do is for a client is tied to it. And so every week I have meetings with our clients. Those clients vary from, there are some who are really game literate and they know what we're saying. And like, when we're having issues on a project, in our weekly meetings, we actually talk about those issues, that, hey, we had this problem. And because we know that client is actually really well versed in gaming, in game development, and they'd be like, oh, XYZ, like they actually help us like with that problem solving solution, which has been great. I have other clients where if I did that, oh boy, bad ideas aplenty, and you can tell just they don't know the process, right? So one thing that I had to learn was, how do I talk about that with the clients, particularly how do I deliver bad news to clients when something isn't going on track. That was something I had to learn real quick with some of the projects that I got put on when I got hired at Filament. And like I said, I don't know how EAE can like learn that, because everyone at EAE knows stuff. And I know like Ryan likes to role play the ignorant client or ignorant producer with some of the projects, but even then, like, and I think when I was in those meetings in EAE, I knew that's like, oh, that's Ryan role playing, and like 60% of my brain just ignored.
That's the actor.
Yeah, but like a good chunk of my brain ignored his comment, because I knew that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
Versus like, it's really different when you have someone who really doesn't know.
That happens a lot up at the Gap Lab. Did you never worked up there?
I didn't get the opportunity.
Yeah, because that's very, very similar to there. So you probably could learn that somewhat there, but really what school is supposed to do is get you in a frame of mind where you can learn, and that even when you're not in school, you can learn. And so it sounds like we did the right thing.
Yeah, well, it's my undergraduate schooling and my graduate schooling, it taught me how to think. If anything else, it taught me a lot of other things. That sounds like really cheapened, but my undergraduate schooling and my graduate schooling really taught me how to like critically think and address a problem. And I think that learning comes out of critical thinking.
I think so. I think your theater background is so valuable for
producer. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I think I've said this to you, Corinne, before, but I feel like there was nothing on this planet that could have prepared me better for production than my theater background.
I agree. We need to like have you teach a class for us.
I'm always game.
Or Madison. How that work? I don't know.
I mean, we're all remote learning. We're all remote learning right now. But
I think we're all going to get vaccines there eventually.
Keep fingers crossed, right? But like, I guess I could talk about that a little bit, because I think some things that like I learned with theater is I guess the biggest thing is learning how to communicate with people is something that in theater I do every day. Every time I'm acting, it's me communicating something to someone, trying to tell a story and have someone respond to that story. And it's one thing I've noticed with newer producers, whether that was the producers from C10 who I got to know while I was in school, or my fellow C9 producers when we first started out. And I'm not saying I was perfect by any stretch. I was absolutely not. But one thing I've noticed is sometimes it's hard for people to know how to actually communicate with people, and being able to figure out how to make what am I saying clear to you. And then the reverse is true, because I think that's where it stops. I think people are decently good about trying to tell someone what they mean. But the hard part is being able to have somebody take that, turn it around, bring it back to you, and then you respond again. It's, you know, it's not a one-way street. And that's something that in theater is so important. Like when you're on stage, you're doing a scene with someone. If I'm just talking to someone, I'm not listening to what they're saying, you can tell, like, it's bad theater. That's what bad theater is.
Yep, I agree.
And, you know, it took me decades, took me 2 decades of my life to figure that. I've been acting since I was 8. And I think I'm getting a hang of that on stage, is being able to talk to someone, and like really being invested and talk to them. And the same thing, having them talk to me and really breathe in what they're saying. And then obviously, like, one of the other things I think theater prepared me for is presenting. I don't think there was a single presentation I did at EAE where I was like panicking. There's plenty I felt like I was definitely not 100% prepared for. But like being able to present and public speak is something that some people have big struggles doing. Some people don't. But my theater background allowed me to be able to, you know, like if the game wasn't quite ready, but I needed to do a sprint review report or a presentation, or I needed to do a final presentation for Rapid, got up and I had to sell it. You know, I had to get up and put the best face on it, have confidence in what I was saying. And, you know, end of the day, no one died. So, and, you know, so being able to have that skill, theater, like 100% prepped me to be able to get up and talk clearly and concisely, and being able to deal with questions. And, you know, that's that other, like the kind of flipping on communication spot, is when, you know, Corinne, when you or Bob or Ryan or Gabe or Ashley asked questions during reviews, I never, like, my initial response wasn't trying to blurt out an answer, because that usually is not the right thing to do. But it was, you know, take a breath, process what was asked, and then either answer it to the best of my abilities. If I couldn't answer it, think, is there a team member who can answer this that's willing to answer it? That's another thing that I would say is really important for producers when you're talking to clients or stakeholders, is know who on your team is comfortable talking to those kind of people.
Yeah, right.
Because the last thing I think you ever want to do is say something or like call on someone and then have them freeze up because they weren't expecting it. That's going to damage your relationship with that person, and they're not going to trust you anymore. Or they might blurt out an answer that's not correct, right? So I always thought, is there somebody on my team who can answer this, who is willing to answer it? Always checking in with them to see if that's something they can do or want to do. And if neither of those two apply, you know, being 100% okay with saying, I don't have an answer for that. Let me go look at this and I'll get back to you. I think that's the most powerful thing any presenter can say or do. And it's something that not nearly enough presenters do. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that statement, as long as you follow through. It becomes a problem when you never follow through. And that should always be, if you have a game journal, that right when you sit down for a presentation, you should get that out, take down that note, and the first thing you do when you sit down is answer that question.
Yep, I completely agree.
I also
Gosh,
really
we're almost
appreciate
out
that.
of time.
Oh, geez.
I was gonna say really
Looked
quickly,
up at the clock and went.
I really appreciate that, because I can't tell you how many times someone would like Slack me and be like, I might be coming to your office in 10 minutes to talk about it, or like someone might be stopping by, or we might call you into a conference room. And so just and that just that little bit of like, hey, we need you to talk about the dialogue system. We might need you to talk about the dialogue system. Like, you're not in the meeting, but we might call you in. And just having that little bit of heads up of knowing like, okay, they're going to be tossing the mic to me. Yeah, it's pretty invaluable to be able to have that level of trust, to be able to be like, I know I can call on this person or ask this person, and have them go to bat for it. So
yeah. And I also would say that that's been, I think, a critical thing for producers, is if you call on someone or you talk to someone, you say, hey, I need you to present this idea. You got to be willing to go to bat for that person.
yes.
Because sometimes that's not what the person they're trying to sue wants to hear. And you don't want that person to start grilling your teammate. At least at Filament, I'm the first line of defense. I'm the person who is the primary point of contact for clients. And I may have my team members help me explain or talk about something. But when that client starts coming in and, you know, is either upset, that I'm there to be that buffer between them, and making sure that my team member feels safe. So they have that, because what I want to happen is I want them to feel like they can express their ideas and concerns when I call on them. And it's a genuine thing. So always giving them a heads up and always letting them know I have their back, and not throwing them under the bus.
Yes, that's called being a good teammate.
It's called being a good person.
Yeah, right.
True.
So like Corinne said, we are out of time, but we have a rapid fire lightning round for you.
Oh boy.
So first answer that comes to your head,
It's fun.
just go for it. All right.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. What's the first video game you remember playing?
Bomberman on the N64.
What was the first system that you owned?
N64.
What is your favorite game of all time and why?
Oh.
Bomberman.
Okay.
Just pick.
Okay, so I have to say StarCraft 2. So StarCraft 2, I played StarCraft 2 at a semi-professional level during my undergrad.
I did not know that.
Oh, I
That's
thought
rad.
I thought I've told this story.
We actually have someone else in the program, a C1 that played at either that or higher level.
Got it. Maybe I know them.
Yeah.
But so I played that, and pretty much StarCraft was such an instrumental part of me growing up. StarCraft 1, and then when StarCraft 2 came out, being able to play that at that level, to meet the people I got to meet, to be acknowledged that like, hey, you're really good at this thing. And then I had this is a small story, I promise. I played it like pretty rigorously. I played it probably 6+ hours a day on top of my undergrad. I did not sleep much during my undergrad.
Wow.
But I watched a video podcast of a guy named Sean Plott, who is a prominent StarCraft personality, and he did a podcast where he talked about his life growing up in StarCraft, and he talked about what are the things that he has learned from games, how he's applied those to his everyday life, and obviously StarCraft has been his big game, and so he talked about that a lot. And every time he said a point, I was like, that makes sense. Like, yes. And he's talking about like StarCraft makes him proud to be a decision maker. Like when you're playing a game that's a real time, you have to like instantly make quick decisions, and you have to live with those decisions. So, you know, proud to be a decision maker, confident making decisions, knowing that if I mess up, that's okay. Like if something goes wrong and I lose or I fail, that's okay. That and this is probably the biggest takeaway from StarCraft and theater for me. Is failure is not a negative thing.
Right.
Failure is, if anything, is one of the most positive things you can do as a developer, because failure teaches you what, like it's a road to know, hey, maybe I don't do that next time. And it's an opportunity to grow.
It's how we learn. It's literally how we learn.
Yep. And so I would say StarCraft is my favorite game, and why? Because after I watched that, I started looking at every game in my life. And that way of what lessons can I learn from this game? You know, whether it's thematic or story, or whether it's, you know, like a personal skill, like being okay with failure, being okay with losing, taking responsibility for making a decision or not making a decision. So I think so many things can be learned. StarCraft was the game that made me learn all those things.
Awesome. That's
Favorite Pokemon?
Mew.
You're given control of a studio. What type of game do you make?
RTS.
Ooh, that makes sense now that I know about StarCraft.
Do you have a main in a game like LOL or Smash or Overwatch?
Yes. I main it just recently switched, so I'm trying to remember now, like if I actually play this character now. I just bought all the DLC characters for Smash, and I'm really enjoying playing as Byleth in Smash.
Lastly, do you have any advice for someone who's considering a career or just starting their career in games?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Okay.
No.
Yes, I have.
Yes. Actually, this is a question I thought was going to come up, and I thought about it before before I jumped on the call today, and now my brain just went like short circuited. But it's back now. So I would say that my biggest advice is be kind. Be kind to everybody you meet. You never know who that person's going to be. So like for me, it was Kenny. meeting Kenny and becoming friends with Kenny helped me get into EAE, put EAE on the map for me. Kenny was an amazing mentor through EAE. And then Kenny was a recommendation for me at my current job. And so for me, the advice would be kind, always be kind to your teammates. If something doesn't go well, very rarely what I say is whoever, like, if it's an engineering problem, rarely what I say is that your engineer's fault, and never should you grill your engineer. That the best thing you can do is be kind, be supportive, help find a solution. And in the workplace, as that is also not a producer's job. If something goes wrong with the discipline, your job is not to grill them. That's their manager's job. Maybe it's your job to bring that up to their manager if it's a consistent problem. But the best thing you can do is be kind and be supportive.
Awesome.
That is amazingly good advice.
Yes. Of all the advice that people give, that's probably the one I would put like at least in the top 3, if not the top 1 for sure.
Hey, I did something right.
So you passed. Congratulations.
Oh, well, Kaltin, it was so great to see you.
It was great to see you both as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our audience, whether they be alumni or aspiring EAE students or anywhere in between. Is there anywhere people hit you up on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like that?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. I need to update it. I haven't updated it in a very long time.
Well, you got a job.
Yeah. But I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to hit me up there. So it's Kaltin, Kaltin Kirby, Kirby. I'm on Twitter, although I think the Twitter handle is weird. But I think if you search for Kaltin Kirby, I'm one of the only one. I think I'm the only one who spells my name like that. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter. What else people to use? And, I mean, those probably be the best places to get a hold of me. And I'm happy to chat about if anybody has questions about life at Filament or life. I guess that's something I didn't talk about. Filament, we make educational games, serious games. So we're not games for mass entertainment. I really don't know what that classifies as. So if you have any questions about like serious games versus regular game development, or what's it like being a producer in a time of a pandemic? What's it like trying to find a job during a pandemic? Happy to answer any questions I can.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.